So hi, everybody, and thank you for coming to this presentation. And we're going to talk about permaculture and why we are passionate about it and why we really love this topic and have dedicated our lives to it. It's all about design, and it's regenerative, healing, sustainable, abundant approaches to design, which is a really exciting part of it. And, everybody is a designer. We're all designing things constantly throughout our life. So if you have some tools to design in a way that's going to increase your yield and reduce the waste stream, etc., it's great, right? Permaculture can improve your quality of life with whatever you have lying around. You can use your resources, whatever they are, to boost your survival potential. And a lot of things today are kind of wasteful and poison or, difficult or something. Permaculture is a solution that flips that situation on its head by working with nature to create a food system and an entire homestead or life system that heals nature. It increases nutrition, eliminates toxins. It increases your resilience. It reduces work, and it increases abundance. Then your garden is a metaphor for the rest of life. A lot of people think permaculture is just about gardening, but it does have to do with all of life, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the presentation. And some examples of permaculture successes are things like it has reforested deserts. It has prevented mass flooding in high flood areas, and cities and governments are using it now. It's brought back streams and rivers in a dry land area with no running water. It's created resilient economies and communities, helped communities avoid downturns in the economic system, and given people a lot more options in life as to what choices they have economically, a lot of creative options. And it's made food growing easier, more nutritious and abundant. And it's done all these things by using these holistic principles that the design approach is based on, that anyone can learn. There's so many ways that you can apply it. So I'm going to share a few things about why we need permaculture and how we do things now and how permaculture is different. And modern agriculture is really declaring war on nature. It's, grow vegetables, okay, in a dry area. So here's how we do things. We go to war with the soil, first of all. We wipe out everything that's living on the land. And then we bring these tank tractors over it. And when we do that, we compress the soil. And there's three things that roots of plants need. They need air, they need water, and they need nutrition. And when you compress the soil, it takes the air out of it. It prevents the water from soaking in because there's no space for the water now. And it kills off the microbes that help break down the nutrition and make it available to the plants. So we're basically setting up a desertified field that we now need to bring in artificial fertilizers to in order to grow plants. And the soil erosion that comes out of this is just tremendous because the water runs off instead of percolating into the soil. And we lose 24 billion tons of topsoil a year around the world. And in Iowa, for instance, some of the soil there was topsoil, like high quality, beautiful topsoil was about 3 feet deep in some places. And now it's down to 3 inches in a lot of places. And we're having to bring in extra fertilizer. So it's really, while it may seem efficient to farm this way, in a lot of ways, it's really inefficient because we're fighting nature instead of understanding nature and thinking about how it can work with nature. And this has to do directly with your garden, because when you use these principles in your garden, you're going to have to do less weeding, you're going to have to do less work, you're going to have healthier soil, you won't have to build your soil so much. There's just so many advantages. This is another example of how nature responds to the way that we farm. And we're creating the conditions when we compact the soil and move everything off of it for the toughest weeds on the planet to grow, because that's the only thing that would naturally grow in that kind of degraded, disturbed soil is super tough weeds. And those weeds are set to survive. They're very good at it, and it's hard to kill them off. So we've now created a situation where we can't get rid of them. And this is what you do in your garden. If you till it, if you disturb it, if you step on it a lot, etc., you create the conditions for these toughest weeds to grow. And the other thing that we do now, because we've created the condition for weeds and pests, is we spray. So we're killing off a lot of things, including all the beneficial organisms in the system and the beneficial pest predators, insects, like predator wasps and flies and things that eat pests, ladybugs. So this is an interesting thing that happens. We, thank you. We use all these pesticides on plants. And here's what's going to happen in your garden too. When you do that, you're killing off the pest predators who don't come back as fast as the pests. The pests, like aphids, will have 5 babies a year, 5 crops of babies per year, and pest predators might have 1 or 2. So now when you kill them off and with the pests are going to come back faster and more, and you're going to have to spray more and more, and you create this condition where the pest predators can never get a foothold, and you always have to spray. And that's where we are in a lot of our agriculture today. And the second thing that happens with this is that, especially on a broad scale, like cornfields, you start getting pests that survive the poison. They're genetic, they have a little genetic anomaly, and they end up being able to survive. And now you have bred super pests, because maybe there's a male and a female that have survived this, and they breed, their babies are going to be more resistant to this poison. And this has been happening all over the world. And it's a situation because, where does that end? And it's interesting that Monsanto is even now promoting no-till farming, because it helps some of those pest predators survive on the edges. It helps the biology of the soil support the plants so that they need less pesticides, but they still use a lot of herbicide. It's interesting that they have, the only reason they're doing that is because their poisons aren't working so well. So there's a lot of interesting ways to increase your pest predator population, and it's fun. A lot of them has to do with the wildflowers that you have or the domesticated flowers that you have in your garden, that feed these adult predators who love nectar. They love flowers, and their babies eat the pests. So instead of this desertified kind of landscape that is degraded and is losing all kinds of nutrients and richness and wealth. I mean, topsoil is wealth. It really is. It's priceless. Instead of that, in permaculture, this is what we end up with. We end up with lush forests packed with food that produce more than the other fields, with ultimately less work. Sometimes it takes more to harvest because these are more complex systems, but they can be more profitable. They're more resilient, and they take less work in the long run. They bring back wildlife in volume, and I can't tell you how much wildlife we have on our farm on a regular basis and the diversity of it. And it has increased since we began farming, and that's really a wonderful effect. This is a food forest, which is just pleasurable to be in. I think it's way nicer than a cornfield, personally. This is an example of a permaculture garden. They're creative, they're interactive, they're fun to hang out in, they're fun to work in. They're integrated with nature. There's trees all around the edges that are fruit trees and bushes. And some of these are perennial crops mixed in with the annual crops in the garden. And we have this in our garden. It's so nice to not have to plant every year. There's some things that just keep coming back and feeding us. Another picture of a permaculture garden that is just lush and beautiful, full of butterflies and birds and food just dripping off the garden everywhere. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the scope of permaculture. So this is a permaculture flower, and this was developed by one of the founders of permaculture, David Holmgren, and he thought about it for a long time, and he kind of divided it into these flower petals of land and nature stewardship, which is, big subject, but it definitely includes growing food, includes your water and caring for nature, building. So we have all kinds of techniques in building that help reduce your energy use and make you more comfortable and use less toxic material. We have tools and technology, which gets into really clever uses of energy and passive heating and cooling and different things like that. Education and culture is very interactive, hands-on. We have a lot of different ways that we approach education so that different learning styles can access the information. Health and spiritual well-being, that's kind of self-explanatory that all these other things are in, and this is going to improve. Finance and economics is one of my favorite subjects in permaculture. It's very creative, and we go outside the monetary system to look at other ways of energy exchange with each other. And there's so many different ways, and they're so creative. It's really just a big fun part of permaculture. And then land tenure and community governance is also creative. It's really practical based, like, how do you build community? How do you have support of the community? It's really nice, for those of you that might have that, it's really nice to have people you can depend on. And how do you build that? If you're new in the area or you haven't really done that, there's all kinds of little tips and tricks that are simple and that can help build a stronger community with like-minded people. And the permaculture community itself is very active, and it's fun to get involved with that in your local area. So this is an example of that first petal, land and nature stewardship. This is the project that really got me involved in permaculture because it was so inspiring. This is in Crenshaw High School in South Central Los Angeles. And I was living in Los Angeles when I did the course. And this high school was a failing, struggling high school in a lot of ways. It, crime rate was high in the neighborhood, and there was people dropping out of school and gangs and other issues. And one of the graduates of this high school did the permaculture course, and he decided to put the principle to use here. And in this little space here, he managed to put this in less than 4 years. And this is a full-blown food forest that has tons and tons of food in it. This is about an acre of land, and he managed to turn this into this. The soil here was very degraded, very poor. You can see weeds aren't even growing in it. And he turned this into beautiful, rich, lush soil that you can see these plants in here like kale. They need almost no care. They're not getting eaten by pests because the soil is so rich and healthy that they're doing fine on their own. They don't need much watering. I've seen these in drought and they were just thriving. um, the way he built the soil is he used the waste stream. And this is something we love to do in permaculture. We love to tap into the waste stream and make it into wealth. And in this case, there were some horse stables not too far from where he was, and he was getting their manure and making compost with it and building this beautiful soil. And then he also had some of these trees in here are chop and drop trees, which grow very, very rapidly. They're Paulonia, which in Florida is invasive, but in California it's not. They grow 20 feet a year. They have big leaves and do a lot of leaf drop. They're deciduous, so they drop their leaves. And he just got a tremendous amount of organic matter from these trees. He cut them down and chopped them up. This was a big way that he grew this beautiful soil and kept it going. And once the system was established, then the leaf drop from the plants themselves and some of the die-off from the annuals and everything continued to maintain the system. And some other projects that I got involved with after this one is in Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, Lakota Reservation. And we decided that we would build a greenhouse because the the weather there is very harsh. They have a 3-month growing season, sometimes 4 months, 3 to 4 months, hail in the middle of July, and a lot of challenges. So we decided a greenhouse would be a way that people could have greens in the wintertime, which was really important for the diet because there's a lot of diabetes and things because good food is just not available. So we made an underground greenhouse. It actually goes 6 feet into the ground. We used tires and other waste stream materials. The wood all came from a burned out pine forest. It was regeneratively harvested. The plastic isn't regenerative, but we needed to have that. And this is Brian Deans on the very right, who was the Lakota who spearheaded this project. I organized the build and got a lot of volunteers there and other resources and participated in it. And this was very successful. The first year we had tomatoes in January and other things growing in there with no heat needed because it was underground, because that earth heat helped keep it warm. Another project we did is a student spearheaded this project from one of our courses that we did on the reservation. And she got this house built for a family that was living in a bus with holes in the bottom of it in this harsh climate. It's super cold in the winter and super hot in the summer. And this is a 2-story house made out of pallets and earth and straw. So it cost almost nothing to build this house. Again, the wood is sustainably harvested from a local forest. And the main cost was the roof and the glass. And some of the glass was salvaged. It was very affordable. Some of the people involved were learning how to build this house. It wasn't that difficult. It's easier than a stick frame in a lot of ways. And this ended up being a 2-bedroom with a loft home for a pretty large family. So that was really nice. And she's continuing to build. She's built several buildings on the reservation. So has Brian. And, it inspired me to see these permaculture techniques could be used in tough situations with very few resources. Another project that I did was I went to Haiti after the earthquake in 2010, and hundreds of thousands of people were living in camps and tents like this because their housing had been destroyed and there was no sanitation. It was a recipe for a lot of disease and more tragedy. And I brought some compost toilet experts down into Haiti, and compost toilet is just a dry toilet that you use straw or some kind of other material to put over your deposit, and then it composts and it becomes beautiful, rich soil with great nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus in it. Your pee and poo is very valuable, actually. So these are some guys working on it. We're using sugarcane waste. Everything but the cane itself is ground up and is used as the organic material that helps the human waste compost. And the kids on the fence were the ones who really made this successful. This was in a camp in Cité Soleil, and they were fascinated by the whole process. They would come and go, but there was always kids on the wall looking at what we were doing. And as soon as this was finished building, they were lined up around outside of the place and down the street to use it. All the kids in the whole camp came to use the compost toilet. So that was fun. And it's had a lot of really good effects elsewhere too. This is the MINUSTAH, which is the armed forces of the United Nations. And they came by, a lot of other people came by from different organizations to see this system, and they learned how we did it and how it was working. And we're hoping that it will be more broadly used. The thing about sanitation in Haiti is if it's not properly done, it could end up in the rivers, and then you get cholera and all kinds of horrible diseases. And this is true anywhere, of course. But it was really essential to do that here. And then one thing permaculture does is integrate. So we took the human manure, once it was broken down, and we used it to grow trees to reforest some of the deforested hillsides in Haiti. And, how do you master permaculture? And this is one thing that I really like about the practice, because the founder, Bill Mollison, created a course and probably delivered a couple hundred or more himself, and in the process really kind of nailed down how to deliver this course and what to teach in it so that people can walk out and actually know how to do a permaculture design. And this is a design process. It's a holistic design process. So we take everything in the system into consideration, and we do a site assessment, and we figure out, how are we going to put all these elements together? What are the resources? What are the challenges of the site? And then we prepare the site for building. And this is our house in Clearwater that I lived in for a while. We might study the soil, and this is one of our classes in Costa Rica, actually, where we were studying soil chemistry, and we might measure the contours or the slope of the land. And we might learn about solar. This is Steve teaching some students about the solar system and how to link up electricity in the same lesson. And this is a class that completed a gray water system. We built one, which is coming off of a shower. We just send it through a wetlands at the bottom there, and then it ends up into a banana circle and keeps that banana circle moist. So the nutrients from the sugarcane were carbon. It was mostly brown material, so there weren't a lot of nutrients in the sugarcane material. It was like leaves. It's similar to leaves or cardboard even. What it did is it gave fuel to the nitrogen and the heat from the humanure. The humanure has all the nutrients, and the sugarcane just helped feed it because the compost process it needs food, which is the brown material, and it needs fuel, which is fire, which is nitrogen-rich material, which is any kind of manure or food scraps, green grass, etc. I don't know if I've answered everybody else's question. To protect and enhance your soil, try not to disturb it and keep feeding it organic material. Those are the simple answers. If you're not turning it all the time or, digging it up, of course, if you have vegetables, you're going to have to disturb it a little bit, but try to keep it as undisturbed as possible and try to keep it covered with leaves or plants or something, cover crops, something like that. But keep feeding it, keep it covered, and try not to disturb it. And we get really dry. Okay, group vegetables and plants. So consider shade over your veggies in the hot months, especially if you do have heat. We do this in Florida. We grow shade trees like moringa that are very fast growing and dappled shade, but they give some protection. And yeah, and that helps protect the plants. We grow kale in the summer in Florida, which most people can't do. We just put it right in our food forest, just like Adonijah did in the South Central food forest example. He had kale growing right in his food forest, and that's what we do. And it lasts through the summer. It doesn't care about the heat. It doesn't grow a lot in the summer. It kind of goes dormant a little bit, but then it's right there in September when it starts cooling off. You have a big kale plant that you can start harvesting off right away. In Florida, our kale is in the winter time. It's a winter plant. So let's see, we have, and then once you learn all these skills and put them together, then you do a design in the course. And I like it because it's step by step, takes you through each aspect of what you have to get done to get a good design. And these are some examples of permaculturists, permaculture students that have created beautiful systems in their yards, just lush, full of food and medicine. And this is a drawing of our house in Clearwater. The design that we implemented there, it's actually a yin-yang symbol here. It's hard to see, but there's the dots here. And it was packed with food. And we started out with a pretty blank slate, put some soil building material on our sand, which didn't have any nutrition. And within 4 months, it looked like this. And we started out with some already mature banana plants from a friend, and we got a lot of other plants from friends, or I had them already in pots or something, and that's what we did. There's hundreds of pounds of food in this yard here. These are sweet potatoes. We got, I think, over 500 pounds of sweet potatoes that year. And bananas, once they started fruiting, they just continuously fruited year round. We kept them fed. We did have to feed them with the manure that we brought in, and we used our compost. We had pretty good compost going. They're heavy feeders, but a lot of this other stuff we minimally fed. The sweet potatoes we didn't do anything to other than the wood chips and the fan. And oops, I keep pushing this up. Sorry. There's another shot of it when it's more mature, and it was just like a jungle. It was very cool in there when that, I mean, in Florida, that's a relative term in the summer, but it was definitely cooler in this yard than in the neighbor's totally sunny yard. And lots of food. We have pineapples and tropical greens growing in there, and mulberries, elderberries, tropical cherries, papaya. You can see the papaya is loaded. So that's a kind of, and we have eaten out of this yard for weeks at a time without eating any other food. And we'd want chocolate or something, so we go to the store, but you could do it. You know, this is probably a sixth of an acre or less, maybe an eighth. How do you answer to wildlife? Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? It's harder in the city than it is in the country because here we have so many predators. For the wildlife, they actually keep it pretty well under control. We don't have the same kind of wildlife pressure on our fruit, for instance, that you will in the city because there's no predators for the squirrels. So in Los Angeles, my food forest, I had a cherry tree, and all the wildlife loved that cherry tree, and the peaches and some of the other fruit came ripe at the same time as the cherries, and all the animals would eat the cherries and they'd leave the other fruit alone, which was great. And we really would have liked some cherries, and we would get 0 cherries, but it worked out because we really love the peaches. So that's one way to do it. We try to work with nature rather than against her, and look for ways that we can share. And the cherry tree is tall and thin, so it didn't take up much room. And that really worked. And there's going to be something in your region that you can do that with too. One thing that we did is we planted 2 big peach trees, and the squirrels did get to those, but there were so many peaches on those. If you feed them really well, that we got plenty. We got more than we could eat. So think about doing that too. They were planted close together too. We trimmed them out so that they didn't interfere with each other, but yeah. People diversity, just people from sorry about that. I keep doing that. People from all over Los Angeles would come here and mix and meet each other, and that was just such a rich experience. A food supply. There was no organic food in that entire neighborhood. They would have to drive pretty far to get to someplace that had any organic food available at all. So this was creating organic food supply freshly and right in front of them. And students working with nature, and it was fun to walk through this food forest. It looked a little sloppy, but he wanted it to be that way because it's like an actual jungle. So you'd be walking through there, you might have to move the plant out of the way and duck under it. And he'd take people on tours, and he'd be handing fruit back to people the whole entire time we're on this tour. Oh, try this, tropical cherry, try a banana. Look at this mango. This is a very rare mango from, Venezuela or something. So it was really fun to go on these tours. And it was such an inspiring project and gave me so many ideas about what permaculture can actually accomplish. So I just want to make sure that we have answered all the questions. Yeah, I love the multi-generational aspect too. One other thing about pests is we do allow the predators. We don't resist predators. We protect our chickens because we have every single predator that would eat a chicken on this farm. But there's so much other wildlife around that they don't really bother our chickens. It's been pretty amazing. And I think I answered, oh, permaculture in pots. Yeah, just have big pots and group them closely together and find plants that are okay in pots because some plants won't produce well in pots. Um, so, go to a nursery and find that a lot of times they'll know, or somebody that's actually growing plants in pots. Uh, some plants, some fruit trees especially, won't produce very much in a pot. A lot of perennial greens will grow in pots. And of course, annual veggies grow great in pots. And see, you could try a bokashi compost system, which you can do in your kitchen. It doesn't smell. It breaks your food scraps down, and you can make beautiful soil for your pots. And those are some ideas. And your city might have a compost place. A lot of cities are gathering their landfill waste or organic waste and making it into compost. And now I want to turn it over to Steve. I want to really thank you for attending, and he's just going to tell you a little bit about our courses.
Yeah, thank you. So you can see we have 4 different courses. They're all just actually one, and it's broken down into online and in person. Over first, we have the online design course. The advantage with this guy is the material will remain available to you indefinitely. And we keep adding material to it, so it becomes like a good personal library. At the end of the course, you get a certificate of completion, and which is actually recognized worldwide.
It's an official Permaculture Institute of North America certificate. We're diplomate with that organization.
Yeah. And then we have the option of just monitoring it. If you're not interested in a certificate and don't need any hand holding, you can do the course, the monitor version. And then we have the in-person, which of course is in person, and you have direct physical contact with people, our land, and so on. The online, we were actually hesitating before we released that or designed that because it's important that you can get hands-on if you want to be able to apply the knowledge. Unlike most schools, we strive for you to be able to apply what you learn, not just pass a test and have a paper that said you passed the test. So the online has a lot of practical hands-on as if you were here. And then the fourth option is if you have a family member and you want them to sign up too, or they want to sign up, we give them a discount. It's basically half off the full price. And this price, we give an early bird discount for signing up early, and it goes up $100 every month until it's the full price.
I
And
just wanted to say one thing about the online course is that we do um, give you personal mentoring. We have an online class, live class every 2 weeks where you can ask questions, and we have speakers at those classes. And we try to make it as interactive and as close to an in-person course as we can. But you can do it at your own pace. You can watch the recordings if you can't come to the live sessions. You can do everything on your own pace.
yeah. So these 4 options gives you a path to be able to learn what we have learned and do it yourself on your own property. So if you're interested, you can reach out to us. If we go back to your slide, Corinne.
See if I can do that. Where is it? This one? Yeah.